Thaddeus Blackwood stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, watching the city lights pulse below like distant, fragile hearts. Every gleam of neon and every passing car reminded him of the relentless pace of the world outside, a world he had long since learned to observe from a distance. Born into a modest family and having clawed his way to billionaire status through sheer determination and a relentless drive for success, Thaddeus had spent the last 3 decades cloistered in boardrooms and private offices, his personal life sacrificed at the altar of ambition. Though his empire spanned continents and his name was synonymous with financial acumen, an insidious loneliness had taken root in the hidden chambers of his heart. It was during one of those sleepless nights, when the silence of his vast, meticulously curated mansion seemed to echo his innermost fears, that the proposal arrived. Not a simple business inquiry, but a meticulously crafted offer that bore the promise of transformation. A legal document lay waiting on his mahogany desk, a contract marriage that would merge his personal void with the luminous presence of someone whose very existence promised to disrupt his carefully ordered life. The idea was audacious: to join forces with Evangeline Morrow, a rising star in the tech industry known for her unconventional brilliance and a streak of defiance against societal norms. Her reputation was built on shattering glass ceilings and challenging the status quo, and it was precisely that audacity that intrigued Thaddeus. In the weeks preceding the formal proposal, Thaddeus had conducted his own quiet investigation into the woman who now occupied a central place in this calculated union. Evangeline's background was as enigmatic as it was inspiring, a story of overcoming personal tragedy, of rising from the ashes of a scandal that had once threatened to derail her dreams. Her resilience was palpable in every interview, every published article, and every whispered conversation among the industry's elite. Thaddeus found himself fascinated not just by her accomplishments, but by the subtle humanity that shone through even the most clinical business reports. It was as if her very presence was a defiant rebuttal to the cold, mechanical world of profit and loss that he ruled. The first meeting was arranged at a luxurious private dining room in one of the city's most exclusive hotels, a setting that married opulence with a quiet intimacy. The table was set with pristine white linens, delicate crystal glasses catching the ambient light, and a centerpiece of fresh white orchids that exuded both elegance and understated strength. As Thaddeus entered the room, he noted the poised grace with which Evangeline carried herself. Her eyes, a piercing shade of blue that seemed to hold both sorrow and fierce hope, met his with an intensity that belied the formal circumstances. For hours, they discussed the intricate details of the proposed arrangement. The conversation flowed from financial projections and contractual clauses to fleeting personal anecdotes that hinted at deeper vulnerabilities. Thaddeus listened intently as Evangeline recounted the challenges she had faced growing up, a childhood marked by both extraordinary talent and the sting of early losses. Her words resonated with a quiet authenticity that stirred long-dormant memories within him. In that moment, the contract on the table transformed from a mere tool for corporate maneuvering into a symbol of the potential for redemption and the promise of an unexpected connection. Throughout the dinner, the ambient strains of a live pianist playing softly in the background seemed to underscore the unfolding drama of two lives colliding. The setting, though crafted for business, became a stage for the raw interplay of ambition, regret, and tentative hope. Thaddeus found himself questioning the rigid barriers he had constructed over the years, while Evangeline's insightful observations on vulnerability and courage made him wonder if perhaps the rigid rules of the corporate world were not the only path to true success. By the end of the evening, as they rose to leave, there was a palpable shift in the air, a sense that beneath the surface of cold calculations and legal stipulations, something far more profound was beginning to take shape. The proposal was no longer just about securing a lucrative merger or safeguarding reputations, it was the first step on a journey toward healing old wounds and daring to believe that even a man who had sacrificed love for success could still be worthy of it. In the quiet aftermath of their meeting, as Thaddeus returned to the solitude of his penthouse, the contract lay open on his desk like an invitation to change his destiny, a destiny that might finally include the warmth of genuine companionship and the possibility of discovering that his true fortune lay not in his bank accounts, but in the shared beats of two hearts. The following day, the world outside Thaddeus's penthouse seemed to hum with a newfound intensity, a silent promise of transformation that mirrored the change stirring within him. After that first evocative dinner, every minute was charged with anticipation, and the delicate interplay of business and vulnerability left him both exhilarated and uncertain. In the cool light of early morning, as the city awoke with an almost conspiratorial whisper, Thaddeus arranged for a follow-up meeting in a private boardroom of one of his most prestigious corporate offices. The room itself, with its minimalist design and floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a panorama of the sprawling city below, set the stage for a conversation that promised to unearth more than just legal stipulations. When Evangeline arrived, her presence transformed the austere space into something warmer and infinitely more intriguing. Dressed in a sharply tailored suit that softened the hardness of the corporate environment with hints of her personal flair, she exuded a quiet confidence that immediately quelled the usual formalities. They exchanged courteous greetings, their eyes briefly locking in a silent acknowledgement of the delicate boundary they were about to cross, one that separated the world of contractual obligations from the realm of genuine emotion. As they settled into plush leather chairs around a polished mahogany table, the initial tension began to dissipate. Thaddeus started by outlining the practicalities of their impending union, a series of legal clauses designed to safeguard mutual interests and secure the merger that loomed over his empire. Yet, beneath the precision of his business acumen, his voice carried an undercurrent of longing, as if every word was laced with the hope of something more personal. Evangeline listened intently, her keen eyes never leaving his face, and soon began to share her own perspective. What started as a meticulous exchange of numbers and conditions gradually evolved into an unexpectedly intimate dialogue. They discussed the intricate details of their respective lives, not just in terms of assets and liabilities, but in the stories that had defined them. Evangeline spoke of nights spent poring over blueprints and coding lines with the relentless passion of someone who had fought her way out of despair, a past marred by both tragedy and triumph. In return, Thaddeus offered glimpses of his lonely journey, the countless boardroom victories that came at the cost of personal connection, the echoes of laughter now long silenced by the demands of empire building. With every shared anecdote, the layers of their carefully constructed facades began to peel away, revealing the scars and dreams that had hitherto remained hidden behind polished exteriors. The conversation took unexpected turns as they debated the merits of calculated risk versus the inherent beauty of unpredictability. In one particularly poignant moment, Evangeline paused and looked directly at Thaddeus, her voice softening as she confessed that she had often felt like a lone warrior in a battlefield of corporate ambition. She admitted that beneath the veneer of success, there lay a heart yearning for genuine human connection, one that could appreciate not just her accomplishments, but her vulnerabilities as well. Thaddeus, visibly moved by her candidness, found himself echoing her sentiments. He revealed that the solitude he had embraced for decades was as much a shield against potential heartbreak as it was a barrier to the very intimacy he secretly craved. Their words danced in the charged silence of that boardroom, blurring the lines between professional negotiations and the tender beginnings of a personal awakening. As the meeting drew to a close, an unspoken understanding had taken root between them. The contract that had once been a rigid document on a glossy table now seemed more like a tentative bridge, one that connected two souls who had long guarded their hearts against the unpredictable currents of life. Thaddeus watched as Evangeline gathered her notes and prepared to leave, each of them acutely aware that their lives were shifting in a way that no meticulously crafted clause could ever capture. In that moment, the boardroom was no longer a sterile arena of profit and loss, but a crucible where the seeds of trust and unexpected passion were beginning to bloom. Stepping out into the crisp afternoon air, both returned to their respective worlds with minds buzzing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. For Thaddeus, the encounter was a silent revolution, a reminder that the calculated risks he had taken in business might pale in comparison to the unpredictable leap required to embrace true love. And for Evangeline, it was a subtle promise that perhaps, even in a world dominated by contracts and strategies, the genuine warmth of connection was not just a distant dream, but an attainable reality. Their journey had only just begun, and the contract that once defined their interaction was now slowly dissolving into the background, yielding space for something far more extraordinary to emerge. In the weeks that followed their initial meeting in the boardroom, a quiet metamorphosis began to unfold in the private spaces where Thaddeus and Evangeline dared to reveal more of themselves. In the hushed ambience of Thaddeus's expansive study, a room lined with leather-bound books and relics of bygone eras, conversations took on a depth that transcended business objectives. One rainy afternoon, with the steady patter of raindrops against tall, arched windows setting a reflective mood, Thaddeus and Evangeline found themselves seated before an antique desk. There, amid the muted glow of a vintage lamp, they commenced a dialogue that slowly unraveled the tightly knit layers of their guarded hearts. Thaddeus began by recounting memories of a childhood that was as paradoxical as it was poignant, a time when a warm family hearth was dimmed by sudden loss and fractured dreams. He spoke of nights spent in the silence of his once lively home, of a father's fading hope and the bittersweet legacy of a sibling who had vanished without explanation. His voice, usually so measured and precise, trembled slightly as he divulged the secrets that had long been buried under the weight of corporate ambition. The stoic billionaire, renowned for his steely resolve, revealed that his relentless pursuit of success had been a desperate attempt to fill the void left by those early tragedies. Each word, each pause, was laden with the quiet agony of a life spent in isolation, a silent testimony to the sacrifices demanded by his ascent to power. Evangeline listened with an intensity that belied her composed exterior. As Thaddeus spoke, she found herself recalling fragments of her own past, moments when the harsh glare of reality had forced her to grow up too soon. In a measured cadence, she recounted the turbulent years of her youth, when the sudden loss of her parents had thrust her into a world of uncertainty and self-reliance. Her narrative was not merely a litany of hardship, but a chronicle of resilience, a journey marked by nights of relentless study, the persistent glow of computer screens in a cramped apartment, and the unwavering determination to rebuild her life against all odds. With each shared memory, the distance between them shrank, replaced by an empathetic connection forged in the crucible of mutual loss. The room, once a silent witness to Thaddeus's solitary musings, now resonated with the soft cadence of two hearts reaching out to heal. As the conversation deepened, they explored the subtle interplay between vulnerability and strength. Thaddeus admitted that the persona he had meticulously cultivated over the years was a mask, a necessary facade to protect him from the pain of rejection and the scars of past betrayals. Evangeline, in turn, revealed the inner conflict that had driven her relentless pursuit of success, the fear that genuine connection might expose her to heartache and undermine the hard-won independence that had become her lifeline. In the dim light of that study, their defenses crumbled under the weight of shared sorrow and quiet understanding. Their exchange was punctuated by moments of reflective silence, a shared pause in which the only sound was the soft hum of the city beyond the glass walls. In those interludes, it became clear that their revelations were not merely the recounting of personal tragedies, but the laying of a foundation for something transformative. The weight of unspoken expectations and the bitter residue of past disappointments were slowly giving way to an emerging hope, a fragile yet potent promise that perhaps the scars they bore could serve as the seeds for future healing. As the afternoon waned and the rain subsided to a gentle drizzle, the atmosphere in the study shifted from somber recollection to a tentative optimism. Thaddeus, with a newfound vulnerability that he had long thought unattainable, reached out to gently clasp Evangeline's hand, a silent gesture that spoke louder than any words of reassurance. In that simple touch, there was a mutual recognition of the journey they both had traversed, and a shared commitment to embracing the uncertain path ahead. It was a moment that transcended the contractual obligations that had brought them together, hinting at the possibility of a bond forged not by legal documents, but by the unyielding strength of the human spirit. By the time they reluctantly rose to part ways that evening, the echoes of their intimate conversation lingered in the quiet corners of the study. The heaviness of their individual pasts had not disappeared, but it had softened, transformed by the discovery that true strength often lies in the willingness to be vulnerable. For both Thaddeus and Evangeline, that day marked a turning point, a moment when the cold precision of business was overshadowed by the unpredictable, yet undeniably powerful, stirrings of a genuine connection. As they stepped out into the cool night, each carried with them the unspoken promise that the journey toward healing and love had only just begun. That stormy evening, when the city was shrouded in a veil of rain and restless winds, Thaddeus invited Evangeline to his penthouse, a rare departure from their strictly professional meetings. The spacious living room, usually echoing with the quiet hum of solitude, had been transformed by the gentle flicker of candlelight and the soft, rhythmic patter of rain against the expansive windows. Outside, the tempest raged with a ferocity that mirrored the turbulent emotions simmering beneath their composed exteriors. Inside, however, a fragile calm had settled, inviting the two to confront the deeper truths that had remained unspoken until now. They settled into a pair of overstuffed armchairs arranged near a grand fireplace, its flames casting dancing shadows on the ornate woodwork and polished marble floors. In that intimate setting, the conversation began tentatively, each word a delicate offering that bridged the gap between guarded pasts and an uncertain future. Thaddeus, his voice low and measured, recounted the myriad nights he had spent alone in his tower of glass and steel, a life meticulously built on ambition yet hollowed out by isolation. His tone carried the weight of years spent suppressing the ache of loneliness, of the unrelenting echo of success that had come at the expense of genuine connection. With each detail, he peeled back layers of his persona, exposing a man who had long feared that vulnerability was a luxury he could ill afford. Evangeline listened intently, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the fire and a depth of empathy that belied her steely determination. When her turn came, she spoke of her own journey, a narrative that wove together threads of loss, resilience, and an unyielding search for authenticity. She described nights spent in the dim glow of computer screens in a modest apartment, where dreams were both born and battered by the harsh realities of life. Her voice, at times trembling with the memory of hardship and at others resolute with newfound hope, conveyed the complex tapestry of her inner world. As she spoke, the barriers between them softened further, replaced by a mutual recognition of shared scars and unspoken desires for redemption. The conversation evolved slowly, transitioning from recollections of painful solitude to an exploration of what might be possible if they allowed themselves to cast aside the defenses that had defined them for so long. In the sanctuary of that room, the storm outside became a metaphor for the inner turbulence each of them had endured. Every gust of wind and roll of thunder seemed to punctuate their confessions, as if nature itself were urging them to let go of the past and embrace the unpredictable beauty of connection. Thaddeus admitted that his carefully constructed world, with its flawless routines and unyielding discipline, had left little room for the chaos of emotions. Evangeline, with a hint of a smile and eyes that sparkled with both humor and sorrow, confessed that she had always believed that true strength lay not in the absence of pain, but in the courage to face it head-on and to grow from it. As the night deepened, so too did their dialogue. They ventured into the realm of dreams and desires, what it might mean to build a future together that was free from the burdens of their past. The conversation took on a cadence of tentative hope, punctuated by moments of reflective silence where the only sound was the soft crackling of the fire and the distant murmur of the rain. In those quiet interludes, the two discovered that beneath the layers of ambition and guarded reserve lay hearts capable of profound tenderness. Thaddeus reached out with a tentative gesture, a hand extended towards Evangeline, as if to test the waters of this newfound intimacy. The simple act, filled with unspoken promise, was met with her gentle acceptance, a silent acknowledgement that the boundaries between them were finally dissolving. That night, as the tempest gradually abated and the first hints of dawn began to seep through the darkened sky, the penthouse felt less like a fortress of isolation and more like a haven of possibility. The storm had not only cleansed the city of its accumulated tensions but had also washed away some of the residual barriers between Thaddeus and Evangeline. They emerged from the evening changed, not with the certainty of a clear, predetermined path, but with a shared understanding that the journey ahead would be as unpredictable and profound as the emotions that had been set free. In the aftermath of their raw and unguarded conversation, a seed had been planted, a seed that promised, if nurtured with care and trust, the potential to blossom into a love capable of transforming not only their lives but the very essence of what they had once believed defined them. That fateful day arrived with the weight of inevitability, shattering the delicate progress they had built together. It began with a seemingly insignificant email, a forwarded message from one of Thaddeus's trusted advisors, that hinted at discrepancies in their merger documents. At first, both Thaddeus and Evangeline dismissed it as a minor clerical error, an anomaly in the sea of well-orchestrated plans. Yet as the day unfolded, further evidence surfaced, weaving a narrative of betrayal that none of them could have foreseen. Thaddeus was the first to notice the signs. In the midst of a critical meeting with several high-level executives, an offhand remark by a junior manager raised alarms. A key clause in their contract, one that had been meticulously negotiated, now appeared altered, its language twisted to favor external interests. Thaddeus's mind raced as he recalled the confidential conversations held only days before. The sense of violation was palpable, a meticulously built fortress of trust now showing cracks. With each passing hour, the evidence mounted. Anonymous tips began to filter in, corroborating the suspicion that someone within his inner circle had deliberately leaked sensitive details to rival investors. The betrayal was not only a threat to his empire, but it was a personal affront, a violation of the bond that was just beginning to bridge his guarded heart and Evangeline's genuine warmth. Evangeline, who had been diligently working on integrating her innovative projects into the new corporate strategy, was blindsided by a public exposé. A tabloid headline, dripping with scandal and distortion, painted her as a calculating schemer, using her charm to manipulate the very system she had fought to reform. It was as if every carefully constructed layer of her identity was being torn away in a rush of malicious intent. The media frenzy that followed was relentless, and within hours, the private details of their contractual arrangement were splashed across news feeds and social media platforms. The betrayal was not confined to the boardroom, it had become a spectacle, a public debacle that threatened to undo the credibility they had worked so hard to establish. In the aftermath of the exposé, Thaddeus and Evangeline found themselves isolated in a storm of accusations and mistrust. The corridors of power that had once resonated with their confident strides now echoed with hushed conversations and sidelong glances. In the sanctuary of Thaddeus's penthouse, the atmosphere was heavy with disillusionment. They met in a private sitting room, the earlier intimacy of their conversations now replaced by a charged silence. For a long while, neither spoke, a mutual contemplation of the betrayal that had forced them to confront the possibility that the foundations of their newfound connection might have been built on deceit. Thaddeus's eyes, usually so steely and composed, betrayed a turbulent mix of anger and sorrow. "How could someone do this?" he finally asked, his voice a low murmur that seemed almost lost in the vastness of the room. Evangeline's response was a measured sigh, her own eyes reflecting the raw pain of being misunderstood and maligned. "It wasn't just about the merger," she replied softly, "it was about everything we believed in, trust, honesty, and the promise of a new beginning." In that moment, the enormity of the betrayal settled over them like a shroud. Their carefully crafted alliance, once a symbol of hope and transformation, now lay in ruins, shattered by the unforeseen treachery of those they had trusted most. Despite the crushing blow, the crisis revealed an unexpected facet of their character. Rather than succumbing to despair or retreating into the isolation of their past selves, Thaddeus and Evangeline resolved to confront the storm head-on. They embarked on a mission to reclaim control over their narrative, determined to expose the depths of the conspiracy that had upended their lives. Together, they convened a secret meeting with their most loyal associates, meticulously gathering evidence and formulating a plan to counteract the damage. The long hours spent poring over financial records, internal emails, and security footage were grueling, yet each piece of uncovered truth served to fortify their resolve. In the midst of that turmoil, a subtle yet profound transformation began to take root. The shared adversity, instead of driving a wedge between them, forged a deeper bond, a silent, resilient promise that they would emerge from the betrayal stronger and more united than ever. As they worked side by side in the dim glow of late-night office lights, they discovered that the crisis was not only an external challenge but an internal reckoning. The vulnerability they had shown to one another in private moments now became a source of strength in the face of public scrutiny. By the time the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, Thaddeus and Evangeline had reached a turning point. The betrayal, as devastating as it was, had stripped away the final remnants of their old defenses, exposing the raw core of who they truly were. They stood together, resolute and unyielding, with the determination to not only restore their reputations but also to redefine the future of their intertwined lives. The shattering of their contract and the public scandal had set in motion a transformation, a painful yet necessary process of rebuilding trust from the ground up. In that crucible of fire and betrayal, a new chapter was poised to begin, one where the bonds of love and loyalty would be tested, refined, and ultimately emerge as an unbreakable force against the treachery of the world. In the aftermath of the public scandal and the betrayal that had shattered the carefully constructed foundation of their alliance, the atmosphere surrounding Thaddeus and Evangeline underwent a profound transformation. The days that followed were marked by a slow, almost imperceptible erosion of the rigid contract that had once defined their relationship, a document that, until then, had been as unyielding as the steel of Thaddeus's empire. Now, faced with the unvarnished truth of human vulnerability and the raw power of shared adversity, the legalistic framework that had once governed their every interaction began to crumble under the weight of genuine emotion. Late one evening, as dusk settled over the city in a tapestry of indigo and soft amber hues, Thaddeus invited Evangeline to his private study, a sanctuary where the chaos of the external world was momentarily silenced by the whispered secrets of old books and memories. The study, with its walls adorned by portraits of ancestors and shelves heavy with the legacy of a bygone era, was the perfect setting for the reckoning that was about to take place. The room was dimly lit by a single, antique lamp, its soft glow casting long, contemplative shadows that danced in rhythm with the unspoken words hanging in the air. They sat across from each other at an old oak table, its surface scarred by the passage of time and the weight of countless decisions made in its presence. Thaddeus broke the silence first, his voice steady yet imbued with a vulnerability that was as rare as it was unexpected. "Evangeline," he began, his tone measured but laced with emotion, "what we have experienced, this betrayal, this upheaval, has stripped away the pretenses we once clung to. I no longer see our union as a mere transaction, but as something far more significant." His eyes, usually so guarded and calculated, shone with an intensity that spoke of long-suppressed longing and the courage to embrace uncertainty. Evangeline listened, her gaze softening as she absorbed every word. In that intimate space, the formalities of their contract seemed to recede into the background, replaced by an urgent need to redefine the essence of their connection. "For so long," she admitted quietly, "I believed that our partnership was built on the cold precision of numbers and legalities. But in the midst of this crisis, I have discovered that the truth of who we are lies beyond these documents. I feel that the person I see in you now, the man who stands here raw and unafraid of his own pain, is the man I was always meant to know." Their conversation unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of confession and revelation. They recalled moments from the previous weeks, the silent glances shared in boardrooms, the intimate conversations that had peeled away the layers of their carefully constructed personas, and the crisis that had forced them to confront the reality of their own hearts. Each memory was revisited with a newfound clarity, as if the harsh light of betrayal had illuminated the true nature of their bond. In that study, amid the scent of aged paper and the quiet hum of a distant city, the walls that had long separated them began to crumble. Thaddeus spoke of the realization that the contract, with all its cold precision, had never been capable of capturing the full spectrum of his emotions. "I've spent my life building walls to protect myself," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of his admission. "But these walls have also kept me from experiencing the warmth of true connection. The chaos of our recent trials has shown me that vulnerability is not a weakness, it is the only way to let love in." His words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply with Evangeline, who, in turn, recounted the inner battles she had fought against the isolation that success had forced upon her. In sharing their innermost fears and hopes, they began to see that the very elements that had once defined them as solitary figures in a merciless world were now the bridges that connected them. As the night deepened, the conversation turned from reflections on the past to a tentative planning of the future, a future that, for the first time, held the promise of authenticity over obligation. They spoke of dismantling the remaining vestiges of the contractual agreement, not in a hasty or impulsive manner, but as a deliberate act of reclaiming their personal agency. Together, they envisioned a life where every decision would be driven by genuine passion rather than by strategic necessity, a life in which the scars of betrayal could serve as the foundation for a new beginning built on trust, understanding, and love. In that quiet study, every word exchanged, every silence shared, carried the promise of renewal. The crumbling of the contractual facade was not an end, but a rebirth, a moment when the superficial layers of their former selves gave way to something raw, real, and transformative. As they eventually rose from the table, their hands brushed in a silent affirmation of the bond that had been forged in the crucible of crisis. The storm outside had subsided, leaving behind a calm that mirrored the peace they were beginning to find within themselves. In that serene aftermath, Thaddeus and Evangeline stepped into a future where the only contract that mattered was the unspoken promise of a love that had emerged victorious over the shadows of deception. In the wake of their newfound unity, an unexpected revelation began to cast a new light on the path that Thaddeus and Evangeline were forging together. One quiet afternoon, while sorting through a box of old family documents in the study that had become their shared sanctuary, Evangeline discovered a weathered leather-bound journal tucked behind a row of ancient ledgers. Its brittle pages, yellowed by time, were filled with cryptic entries and delicate sketches that hinted at a hidden legacy within the Blackwood lineage. As she carefully turned each page, a pattern emerged, one that suggested Thaddeus's life had been guided by forces far beyond the predictable calculus of business deals and legal contracts. When Evangeline shared her discovery with Thaddeus, the revelation struck him with an almost palpable force. The journal was penned by his estranged mother, a woman whose mysterious disappearance had long haunted his memories. In these pages, she spoke of a promise, a vow made generations ago that the Blackwood legacy was destined to be redeemed through an alliance not merely of commerce, but of hearts united by fate. Her words were tender and prophetic, describing a union that would mend old wounds and awaken the dormant virtues of compassion and love in a family steeped in ambition and isolation. The more Thaddeus read, the more he began to see his life and the unfolding events in a new light. It seemed that every calculated risk and every meticulously engineered strategy had led him, unknowingly, toward this moment of transformation, a moment in which the very essence of his being was called to change. In the days that followed, the couple delved deeper into the secrets woven into the fabric of the journal. Together, they deciphered obscure references to hidden meeting places, ancestral rituals, and long-forgotten symbols that adorned the Blackwood crest. Late one night, as the city slept beneath a blanket of starlight, Thaddeus and Evangeline embarked on a private expedition within the mansion. They retraced the steps detailed in the journal to a secluded wing of the estate, a part of the building shrouded in dust and memories, where a forgotten portrait gallery whispered the stories of generations past. There, behind an intricately carved wooden panel, they discovered a small, sealed compartment. Inside lay a delicate silver pendant engraved with a symbol that resonated with both of them, as if it were a tangible token of their shared destiny. The pendant, cool and weighty in their joined hands, confirmed what the journal had hinted at, that their union was preordained, a convergence of souls destined to heal the scars of the past. As the significance of this legacy sank in, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted from one of cautious optimism to vibrant anticipation. What had begun as a contractual arrangement built on necessity now revealed itself to be the fulfillment of a long-hidden promise, a promise that transcended the boundaries of business and betrayal. With each new discovery, Thaddeus found himself shedding the layers of isolation that had defined his life. The bitter memories of loss and the relentless pursuit of success were slowly replaced by an emerging hope and an earnest desire to honor the legacy his mother had envisioned. Evangeline, too, felt the stirring of something profound. The evidence of fate, interwoven with the threads of mystery and love, compelled her to embrace the unknown with courage and passion. In a series of heartfelt discussions that stretched into the early hours of the morning, the couple pieced together a plan not only to protect their personal futures but to restore the integrity of the Blackwood name. They decided to reveal the truths of the journal to a select circle of trusted advisors, carefully choosing those who could help them navigate the treacherous waters of corporate politics and public perception. In doing so, they transformed what had once been a private and painful discovery into a rallying cry for renewal. The scandal and betrayal that had once threatened to tear them apart now became the catalyst for a deeper, more meaningful bond, a bond that promised to redefine not only their own lives but the legacy of a family that had long been shrouded in mystery and regret. By the end of that transformative week, Thaddeus and Evangeline stood together in a quiet moment of reflection within the gallery, the silver pendant glinting softly in the ambient light. They realized that the unexpected twist in their journey was not a detour from their destiny, but an essential part of it, an invitation to embrace the unknown and rewrite the narrative of their lives with honesty, vulnerability, and an unyielding commitment to one another. The secrets of the past, once buried in dusty journals and forgotten corridors, now shone as beacons of hope. In that charged silence, filled with the weight of ancestral promises and the tender anticipation of a future built on love, they silently vowed to honor the legacy they had uncovered. Their love, tested by betrayal and tempered by truth, was now poised to become a living testament to the transformative power of fate, an enduring force that could mend even the deepest scars and illuminate the path toward a destiny that was as mysterious as it was magnificent. In the waning hours of a cool autumn evening, Thaddeus and Evangeline stood on the expansive terrace of the mansion, overlooking a city that now seemed to pulse with renewed life and promise. The revelations of recent days, the shattering of old contracts, the betrayal that had once threatened to tear them apart, and the mysterious legacy unearthed from dusty journals, had culminated in a moment that felt both apocalyptic and redemptive. Tonight, the mansion was transformed into a celebration of rebirth, a luminous convergence of the past and the future, where the air itself seemed charged with the magic of destiny fulfilled. The celebration was not a grand public affair but a carefully orchestrated gathering of those closest to them, the loyal advisors, trusted family members, and a select few who had witnessed the evolution of Thaddeus and Evangeline's journey from cold business acumen to raw, unguarded vulnerability. In the softly lit ballroom, adorned with cascading draperies, glistening crystal chandeliers, and tables dressed in pristine white linen, every detail spoke of an opulence tempered by a newfound tenderness. The silver pendant, discovered in a hidden compartment of the gallery, was displayed prominently at the center of a floral arrangement, a symbolic token of the ancestral promise that had guided them to this moment. As guests murmured in quiet admiration, Thaddeus took the stage, his voice steady yet imbued with an emotion that surprised even him. He spoke not of quarterly earnings or strategic alliances, but of a journey, one marked by unexpected betrayals, deep personal scars, and, ultimately, a transformation of the heart. He recalled the long nights spent in solitude, the painful realizations that had come with each act of betrayal, and the slow, painful dismantling of the walls he had built around himself. In his words lay the confession of a man who had learned that true strength was found not in isolation or in the ruthless pursuit of profit, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to embrace love in all its unpredictable glory. Evangeline, radiant in a gown that combined modern elegance with classic grace, joined him on stage. With a calm yet fervent tone, she recounted her own metamorphosis, from a solitary fighter in the corporate battleground to a woman who had discovered that the secrets of the past were not curses, but gifts meant to guide the future. She spoke of the painful irony that the very scandal meant to ruin her had instead revealed the depth of her capacity for trust and resilience. In her words, the betrayal that once threatened to undermine her spirit had instead forged a bond so powerful that it transcended the cold precision of contracts and legal agreements. As their voices intertwined in the quiet confidence of shared purpose, the room seemed to hold its breath. The couple's declaration was not merely a renunciation of a business arrangement, it was an embrace of a destiny reimagined. Their union was now a living testament to the idea that love, when nurtured in the crucible of adversity, could redeem not only individual souls but also mend fractured legacies. With every word, they wove a tapestry of hope, one that honored the painful lessons of the past while looking forward to a future where compassion and authenticity reigned supreme. In the midst of this heartfelt revelation, an unexpected twist brought the evening to an even higher crescendo. From the back of the room, a familiar figure emerged, a trusted family friend long presumed lost, whose presence was as shocking as it was heartwarming. The arrival of this long-missing mentor, whose wisdom had once guided Thaddeus in his youth, was heralded by a ripple of astonishment among the guests. With eyes filled with both nostalgia and quiet pride, the mentor recounted how he had witnessed the rise and fall of the Blackwood legacy and had always believed that redemption was possible. His words, echoing through the elegantly adorned hall, lent an air of historical significance to the proceedings, as if the very fabric of time had aligned to honor the transformation unfolding before them. That unexpected reunion served as a final, potent reminder that the path to true love is rarely linear. It is filled with detours, heartbreaks, and moments of profound revelation. As the mentor's tale drew to a close, Thaddeus and Evangeline stepped forward once more, this time not as reluctant partners bound by a legal contract, but as two souls united by a shared destiny and an unbreakable promise. In a quiet, private ceremony that followed the public celebration, they exchanged personal vows under a canopy of stars. There, in the cool night air on the terrace, they pledged to honor not just each other, but the legacy that had brought them together, the promise of healing old wounds and forging a future where love could conquer even the deepest betrayals. As the night gave way to the soft hues of dawn, the mansion stood as a beacon of hope and renewal. The celebration had not only marked the end of an era defined by isolation and calculated ambition but had also heralded the beginning of a new chapter, one in which Thaddeus and Evangeline would navigate life together, guided by the light of their shared past and the promise of a future replete with authenticity, passion, and endless possibility. In that transformative moment, every shattered piece of their former lives was gathered and reshaped into something remarkably beautiful, a love that defied expectations, transcended contracts, and promised to endure against all odds.